Okay, so second big idea today. We're going to talk about the mind. Synonym consciousness, synonym awareness. So in the West, the Western view of the mind is that consciousness shows up as a result of the activity of your brain. Like somehow, brain cells talking to each other makes experience. So stay with me here because you guys are experiencing something right now. And those of you at home, you're experiencing something. Now, the brain cell activity is happening, right? It's totally happening. But how is brain cell activity making something aware that's aware? Like you're looking through your eyes at me, right? Get in touch with what's looking. And how in the world is brain cell activity making that happen? So I do want you to know, scientists say most scientists say that that's what's going on, that the brain is making consciousness, even though there is absolutely no way to prove it, okay? Which is strange, because this is the dogma, that consciousness is an epiphenomenon, which means a phenomenon that's happening on top of this activity. Okay, so there's an emerging view which is catching up to what Eastern meditators thought thousands of years ago. So the emerging view is this, that the mind is more like process. So mind, remember we were just talking about life, right? Life is a flow, and that flow we're calling process. Well, the emerging view is that mind is a process too. It's a flow. What that is, nobody knows, and how it's making us conscious, no one knows. But its primary activity is to monitor and modify, like be aware of what's flowing. So it's like a feedback loop. It's like there's this weird thing, that there's this consciousness that's there, that's conscious, that can be conscious of the objects, so the sights and the sounds, the thoughts and the sensations, and it can be conscious of itself, which is so weird. Okay, so that's the emerging view, and there's this amazing teacher. His name is Daniel Siegel. He's a psychiatrist. He works out of UCLA. He's big in the mindfulness arena. He's a total rock star. He is endorsing this new version of mind, which is because of his prominence and his credibility, is very disruptive for the sort of old vanguard of science. It's like people are really beginning to think differently, which is great. Okay, so now, guess what? Meditating monks thought thousands of years ago. So here's the Eastern view of mind. Eastern view is that the mind has sort of two parts. Not really parts, because there is no part, there's no division. But one aspect of mind is that it's ultimate. And what does ultimate mean? Ultimate means that nothing's behind it. It's the source. Okay? And there isn't anything behind the source. Now that source, again, not a thing, and we're talking about qualities now, qualities in that transcendental realm. You're not going to see it, taste it, smell it, touch it, even think about it. One of the qualities is spaciousness. So mind is very much like a space. It doesn't have any edges. Not a something, but not a nothing either. It's a space. All at the same time. Not a something, not a nothing. Very weird. All right. It's clear. And they use the term mere clarity. And the mere means nothing's there. It's a complete absence of thingness. There's this spacious mere clarity. Now, if that's not weird enough, here's the weird part. It's awake. Okay? And so this space, that's not a something and it's not a nothing, that's perfectly empty and clear, is awake. Now that wakefulness is allowing us to become conscious of the objects. So the luminous quality allows us to become conscious of sights and sounds, thoughts and sensations. So the objects are illuminated by the space. Because consciousness is there, we can become conscious of those things. Okay? Now, next, this merely clear, empty, awake space has the quality of perfect acceptance. So agape love, that Christian idea of perfect accepting love, kind of like God's love, different than romantic love. There's no attachment. There's no resistance. So anything that shows up can show up in consciousness. Also, this space is mobile in the sense that through moments of time, it keeps going and it's everlasting. So you can think of it's eternal. Okay? And lastly, this constant quality also has an eternal feel, but think of the constant as completely unchanging. Anything can pass through this space, but nothing changes it. That's what meditation masters have been trying to describe the qualities as pointers to it. Now, it's as close to us as anything, but it's so subtle, we'll never get it without the pointers. So I'm going to point you towards Ultimate Mind today, and today you'll get an inkling of it. Even you at home, sitting in front of a computer screen or tablet, you'll get an inkling of it. Because these qualities are there to be experienced. All right, so now let's talk about what we're more familiar with. That's called relative mind. And relative mind is more like the Western view, thoughts. And when we think of ourselves, like if I say right now, think of yourself. Well, you can. Okay, but what is that? Well, thoughts, right? Memories. That energy and information, that's coming and going. And it got imprinted in the mind, in the space, and here's how it happened. So the first thing that happens is that consciousness comes into contact with energy and information, sights and sounds. So you're born and your eyes open up and you start listening and having experiences. That's contact. So consciousness contacts the energy and information. It contacts the objects. Now, contact is going to result in what's called feeling. Some things we contact, oh, I like this thing. Sometimes we contact something, oh, I don't like this thing. That's the feeling aspect. Every one of us recognizes that. It happens to us all the time. We come into contact and then immediately after contact, what happens? We start narrating, right? The habit of being ourself, that voice in our head shows up to begin to spin a tale or a story about what we just contacted. You know, mom calls you on the phone and it's not just moms, ladies, it's dads, it's kids, right? It's the people that we're really close to. You get that phone call, and, or it's your boss, or it's your employees, okay? So those people, contact, feeling, then the discrimination, the judgment, the storytelling. Right after that, because of this visceral and cognitive, intellectual activity, our attention orients towards that dynamic. Because it's a flow, right? There's a something that you're in contact with, and if it grabs you emotionally, tunnel vision begins to happen. Then what happens is, either if you're in contact, if you're in a relationship in that moment with something you really like or you really don't like, and your attention narrows down on it, the very next thing that's going to happen is you're going to want to do something. That's intention. And so intention is an organizing principle. That's who you think you are. You think you are the intention, like the one that's making the free choices all the time. But I'll just tell you, mostly intention is completely unintentional. Mostly it's just running out of habit. You contact this object, it grabs your attention, there you go. There really isn't any intention. It gets tangled up with your attention. Those two things, dynamic feedback loop. Attention, intention, and you're stuck. More emotion. And that's where the imprints come. That's the karma. When intention gets hijacked and you keep doing something over and over and over, that's the karma. Okay, that's the action that we're going to really try to look at. And now that you know these 5 words, William James, he was so brilliant, one of the first American psychologists. He said that if you do not have a word for something, you can't really interact with it. And so in order to interact with our own mind through this change process, what we now have 5 words to see what's going on. We might, after you leave here, after you turn this program off, you might come into contact with an object. And immediately after contact, you'll get feeling. And then there might be a voice and attention and intention. And then if you reflect back on the process, let's say you memorize these 5, which I'm going to ask you to do. Contact, feeling, discrimination, attention, intention. Let's say you memorize those 5 things, and then it happens to you, then you'll be able to see it happening to you. That's when you can monitor and modify. Okay? Great. Okay, so that's the Eastern view of mind. Fantastic. Pretty simple.